I always felt like my voice didn't matter. So that was pretty tough in trying to find my own voice. If I felt my voice didn't matter at all, then like I almost treated my own voice that way, that, oh, whatever my thoughts are, they don't matter. And I've certainly have a history of that. So overcoming that was pretty difficult. And in my case, just not possible in a corporate job. Welcome to episode 80 of Working Towards Our Purpose. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about the truth of leaving your corporate job. But before we get into that, we're going to have our check-in. So just take a moment and check in with yourself, and I'm going to do the same. All right. So hopefully you got a second to see how you're feeling today before we get into the episode. For me, I'm feeling excited, feeling grateful, doing a lot of reflecting today. So today's episode, the truth about leaving your corporate job. Today as I'm recording this, marks my 5th year of leaving corporate. And yeah, I've just been doing a lot of thinking about how I used to be back then, seems like a past life, and how I'm feeling now and what I'm doing now and what I get to do. So feeling grateful for that. Also a little nervous about this episode. I think I did a lot of planning to try to get it right. So yeah, we're here now. So planning's over. So time to get into the episode. So yeah, it's been 5 years since I left my corporate job, and I was working in the military defense contracting industry, worked for 2 major corporations in the state that I live, Connecticut, and that's what I went to school for, mechanical engineering. And then after 2020 of sitting home, doing my side business and my corporate job for a whole year in my apartment, not leaving, I finally made the decision to leave and to try to pursue other things. And this episode's going to be about how I've changed, I guess, since leaving corporate, and the negative things that corporate, I think, could incur on somebody who's there. And I do want to have a little disclaimer about this episode first, that I believe everybody has their own path, and that's up to you to decide. So I don't want to make it seem like if you don't work, if you work a corporate job, then you're a bad person. I don't believe that at all. I just believe for me that this is true, and I can only speak from my experience. And I'm going to try to not talk too negative, but also sort of talking about the truths of what corporate life did to me. So yeah, if you're not into if you're not on the fence of thinking about your corporate job and maybe getting out of it, then maybe this episode's not for you. But yeah, from here on out, not going to be making any more excuses about hating on corporate. So, but yeah, I just want to draw that line, because I'm not diminishing people that do. I don't want it to. That's not my intention, is to diminish people that make other choices than me, because we all make our own choices, and everything's different for all of us. So, but this is hopefully my intention with the episode is to inspire possibly somebody who is on the fence, who is me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was afraid to make a change and sort of just confused by everything I was experiencing at corporate. So hopefully it'll be helpful. But I do have 4 reasons that I want to get into as to why I think the corporate lifestyle holds you back. But before we get into that, I do want to be not just talk about the positives of leaving corporate, but also what are the hard things I've experienced since leaving a corporate job. And we'll get into that first, because I think the list is shorter. But yeah, obviously, not a steady paycheck. That's something that's difficult. It took me a long time to be okay with not valuing my life in a monetary sense, which is what a normal corporate job intends on not in tens, but that's kind of like how you value a corporate job. Like, how much money do you make? And, making more money is a good thing and making less money is a bad thing. And so I kind of had to do a lot of work of reworking my belief system around money and not valuing myself with money. Certainly made less money since I've left. I think something else to discuss and to talk about is like, I think maybe there's a romanticized version of like having your own business and thinking you can work your own hours and work whenever you want. And though that may be true, I think you certainly have to work very hard first to get to that point. So it's not about working less hard. Certainly, I guess the intention for me would be over time to work less hard. But I think the difference is that you get to work hard for the things that you believe in and the things that you like, and the things that you're passionate about. Whereas at a corporate job, you have to work hard for somebody who's telling you what to do. And that never really aligned with me. I never really liked being told what to do. So for me, it was hard to do things that I was asked and to not understand why I was doing them. And then to also be told to work hard at those things that I didn't understand. So that was difficult in the corporate world. But it doesn't mean like once you leave, you're not going to have to work hard. You still have to work hard, certainly. So, working hard. What was the other thing I said? Sorry. Right. So not steady income. You still have to work hard. And then the third, I think, hard part about leaving corporate is the benefits thing. And you do get, when you're at a corporate job and you have a steady paycheck full time, you get benefits usually, which is something, at least when I was there 5 years ago, you didn't really have to think about. You just contributed part of your paycheck and you didn't have to worry about benefits. You just had this plan that covered most things. And I've been, knock on wood, pretty healthy. So I don't have any like major medical needs other than like therapy. So I never really had to worry too much about that when I was working my corporate job. But then when I left, you do have to think about getting benefits by yourself. So it is annoying. You do some cases have to pay more for benefits or pay what seems like a lot for benefits. But, I think it's just part of the sacrifice that you make for the lack of comfort. So it's not impossible. Like there's, in my state, there's Connecticut, there's a state program where you can go and like say how much money you make. And if you don't make that much money, they help you out and it's not as expensive. But I think benefits in general, just for everybody, even people who are working corporate jobs now, it's really tough. And it's kind of just the climate that we're in. Hopefully one day that will get better, but I think it's just a necessary evil if you decide that benefits are for you. Of course, you can go the not benefit route and not have benefits. But I guess I look at benefits sort of like insurance. Like, if I were to get into a major accident or something, I want to make sure that I'm covered and not going to like hit bankruptcy. But that's my philosophy. I'm not going to get into that. But benefits are also tough. So those are the hard things. Having to fend for yourself on benefits, not steady income, and you still have to work hard, but that's not really a negative thing, I don't think. But I just want to clear like any misconception. So okay, let's get into the like meat of this episode, which is these four. I've really tried to condense like all the negativity that I got from a corporate job into four categories, four things that I think is really hard, was hard for me in corporate life. So first thing is the biggest and easiest. It's really hard to be, I found it really hard to be my authentic self in that setting. When I was in my corporate jobs, there's a lot of like homogenous culture, and everybody's got to kind of do the same thing. And usually I was like grouped with people in a cubicle. There was like 4 people or like a room. And I don't know, it was weird that like all those 4 people kind of just like did the same things. And like one person would buy a car and then another person would buy a car, and like one person would get into this and then the same person would get into this. And I don't know, not that that's a bad thing, I guess, but it certainly didn't really encourage individuality and being different. And much like in, school and growing up, you're sort of made fun of for being different or for wanting something different or liking something different or acting in a different way. So that was something that I always really struggled with. I never really fit in, and I like wrestled with the idea of like, oh, well, maybe the way that I want to do things isn't good enough. If everybody else here is doing it this way, maybe I should just be doing it that way. So that always kind of left me in like a state of confusion, and I didn't enjoy that feeling very much. And since leaving, I've been given more freedom to try to explore who I am and to try to find who my authentic self is. And I'm still learning that, and I'm still like working towards that. But I feel like I'm able to do that a lot more freely now that I am not in the bounds of a corporate culture. And along with that, like independent thinking, like there's been so many times where I like thought about a problem in a different way at my corporate job, and it was like discouraged or looked down upon, or being like, I would always get the response like, just do it. This is the way we do it this way, and be quiet. Like go to your desk and just do the job. So thinking independently was also kind of discouraged, which is kind of crazy to me, because I don't know. It's why wouldn't we use our own individual minds to come up with problems creatively? But yeah, anyways, independent thinking, not really encouraged. Again, my experiences. But another thing that like I think is really problematic in corporate culture, is not speaking up when you see something wrong or when you think something is wrong. And that kind of brings me to the other point of like this power dynamic. There's always like a power dynamic between your boss and the employees, and the boss and the boss's boss. And like, I think that encourages you to not speak up when you think that something's wrong. And because you're always afraid of losing your job because of that power dynamic. You're afraid of, making somebody mad, pissing somebody off, and not getting a raise. And it's just, it encourages you to just be quiet and to not use your voice. And just one example I think I've talked about before, like there was a case where I worked with somebody who was very not fitting in with the group, and they made fun of him all the time when he wasn't there. And one day he was like outside on the phone crying, and they were all making fun of him, and nobody said anything. And I thought it was ridiculous that they were making fun of him for being hurt. And it was so hard for me to say something to my boss that was like a kind of a wake up call for me. I was like, wow, it was so hard for me to say, hey, I think what you're doing is not right. That like, I don't know, it just shows the pressure that you're under to just fit in and to just keep quiet and do what you're supposed to. And I think in that specific case, when they were making fun of this kid, the other coworkers, maybe they didn't want to, but they just, kind of egged the boss on because he was doing it. So it just creates this like groupthink that I think is not helpful, especially if you're trying to identify problems and you're, there's systematic issues with companies. And, I think that's sometimes why you see like these huge catastrophic failures, is because there's a lot of like yes men. And if there's a boss that's really egotistical and nobody wants to say no to him, then it can just create lots of issues down the line. So yeah, I think that part of that is just the fear of like, there's somebody above me that's more powerful and I don't want to upset them. So that whole thought process I think is really problematic. And I never really agreed with that. So that's another major, I think, hindrance on trying to be your authentic self. And then let's see. So a couple more things on this topic. I think I touched on it before, but like the just almost being shamed for being different, which I don't know. That's so odd to me now, to shame somebody for being different than you instead of being intrigued and like celebrating differences. So that's again problematic. I always felt like my voice didn't matter, so that was pretty tough in trying to find my own voice. If I felt my voice didn't matter at all, then like I almost treated my own voice that way, that, oh, whatever my thoughts are, they don't matter. And I've certainly have a history of that. So overcoming that was pretty difficult, and in my case, just not possible in a corporate job. So that was really something that I had to work once I left to try to overcome. And then the last thing is just mental health. I think mental health is being talked about more in corporate settings, but I think it's still such a taboo of, oh, this person's taking a mental health day. Okay. Like, there's just a lot of like, not seriousness around it. At least there was when I was there. I guess I haven't been there in 5 years. So I have seen positive changes, at least outwardly. So I'm not sure what it feels like in there anymore, but I do think that it's really not encouraged to think about your mental health, and I think that that's a bad thing. So second thing, the second reason that I think corporate life holds you back is that you're always living in this constant state of fear. And I kind of got into this with the last one, but just that power dynamic. You're always in like a state of fear of trying to not do something wrong or trying to not upset your boss so that way you can keep your raise. And it just, for me, I was always like in a constant state of, oh, I hope I'm not doing something wrong. Because even if you were doing something that you thought was right, another person can come along and be like, no, you're doing this wrong. You should be doing it this way. And there was just never any sense as to like why we were doing things. I felt, and yeah, it just kind of keeps you in this constant state of fear. It keeps you in this fight or flight mode. It keeps you like anxious. I remember even if I did nothing all day long, but sit in my cubicle, just sitting there like nervous that somebody was going to come yell at you for not working makes you exhausted at the end of the day. Like even if you're trying to do something else, after you get out of work, it's like sitting there tensed up all day. It makes you exhausted by the time you get home. And that was something that I was always kind of dealing with. The fear of money, I think, really comes up. There's this like idea that like everything revolves around money. I remember the last job that I was in, everybody was just like trying to make their 401ks the biggest they could possibly make them, because that means they could retire 2 years earlier or 5 years earlier or whatever it was. And there was just this constant state of like, oh no, the market's down now. Like now I can't retire as soon as I thought I wanted to. And just the fear of like not having enough, not hoarding enough money. And that's always, I don't know, I don't think that's a helpful state to live in, to live in a state of fear. And I think the biggest thing is just having that fear present makes you closed up, and it made me feel closed up. So, something that I was thinking about today as I was reflecting about how I felt 5 years ago versus now, I feel way more open. And I know that's a broad term, but now, and I'll try to articulate it. Now I feel that there's anything that I can go do if I want to do it. And I know there's going to be like people who don't think that it's true, but I believe that if I want to work on something, I can figure out how to do it if I want it bad enough. And back then, I remember just being like so caught up in like not thinking I could do anything. Like I didn't believe in myself. When I went to leave corporate, my side job or my my side business that I started, that I eventually went full-time or tried to go full-time with, was basically the only other thing that I knew how to do. And I didn't think of anything else. Like I didn't think I could leave my corporate job and start something completely new. I didn't think I can leave my corporate job and pursue a passion, music, that I was into. I thought that I had to, it just closed-minded thinking, like only thinking that there was one option. And now I think I don't think like that. I think way more openly. I can think like, I can go make a business with fermenting vegetables, or I can go make a business with music, or I could go make a business doing content stuff. And like, I feel more capable at what I can do. And I think that's only possible because I left that environment, that corporate environment of just constantly living in fear. And I think living with less fear makes you more open, and it makes you more willing to see possibilities, to see connections, to see the stuff that's right in front of you, to see what you're good at. I think, I don't know if I articulated that very well, but I think just being more open, feeling like I have more possibilities, which is a good feeling to have because we all have so many things we're good at and so many things we could do if we pursued them. So yeah, that's the second one is living in fear. I live in a lot less fear now that I have left that job and I've had time to think about, what that means. So the third thing that I think corporate jobs steal from us is our creativity. I've been so much more creative since I've left my corporate job. I never released any music up until I think 2023, which is still a couple of years after leaving my corporate job, but I have more time for it now. I have more time to be creative, and I emphasize how important that is to me. And not only just like creative things like music and like writing, but also just thinking more creatively. Like I said earlier, I think difference in thought isn't really valued in a corporate environment, and that leads you to be less creative. It leads you to think, well, we have to do it this way or we have to do it this way. Very, very black and white. And since leaving, I've been able to focus more on creativity and put more energy into my creativity. And it's been something that's taken me pretty far, I think. And now I have this opinion that creativity is like such a valuable thing. It's one of the things that humans are given as this this talent, this inherent skill. We are all creative. I know people who think that they're not creative. Like, it's this amazing thing that we're able to do, but so many of us don't or aren't allowed to be creative or to have creative expression. And it's like almost magical creativity. Like if I'm sitting down and I have nothing, I start with nothing, I pick up my guitar, 30 minutes later, I have this song that I just created that I pulled out of somewhere. And I think my opinion of creativity has changed. I don't think of us as like being good at creativity or not being good at creativity. I think of creativity as like this endless well of goodness that you can tap into if you allow yourself. But when I was in my corporate job, I never allowed myself to really tap into that. Like, I did a little bit of music stuff here and there, but I mostly like turned off my creativity valve, where now it's like I'm opening it, it's wide open, and I can have ideas all the time and I can be creative. And it's hard to value creativity, I think, because it doesn't necessarily have like a tangible good or like monetary value. So it's hard to value creativity, but yeah, it's like, it's so important to me now, and it wasn't back then. So I think that being in a corporate environment kind of steals your creativity from you a bit. So that's the third thing. And then the fourth thing that I think is corporate environments, corporate life kind of steals from you is your time. And this one's like the last big one that like, it's just like, I think back now to like how much time I spent sitting in a desk pretending like I was working and trying to make the work that they gave me last. And like, I don't know, it didn't seem like much at the time, I guess, but like 40 hours a week is such a huge amount of time. And I never had a job where I needed 40 hours to do my job, but I had to be there for 40 hours. And that's just like such a disconnect. And I think time is like one of our most valuable things. We can't get it back. We're not promised another 10 years. We're not promised anything. Like, right now is all we have. And the idea of like postponing your happiness until retirement, or postponing your freedom until retirement, till 40 years down the road, is just like, I really don't believe in that. I really don't believe in like hoarding a bunch of money and then saving it and then having fun when you're retired, because that's not promised. Like, you don't know that you'll be there. I mean, how many times have you heard a story of like somebody working a job and first year of retirement, they died like out of nowhere? And not to be morbid, but like, that's a possibility. And like, I don't know, I don't want to hope that how I am now will be in the future, so then I can enjoy myself in the future. It's like, we can enjoy ourselves now. We can do the things that we care about now. We can put energy into what we believe in now. So yeah, the idea of like the corporate job, everything's always postponed. It's like, I have to be at my desk between 9 to 5, 8 to 4, or whatever, I have to postpone everything. And I was always finding myself postponing stuff. And I think the time where like this really sort of was right in my face of like, oh, I have my time back now. Like that is something that's irreplaceable, was when I interviewed my brother the second time, and he was talking about how when our aunt was in the hospital passing away, he was at his corporate job and he was just like so frustrated that he was stuck at his desk, and I was able to spend time with her, which ended up being like her few last weeks, which we didn't know at the time, but because I had a flexible schedule, I was able to spend time with her. And like when he like relayed that to me during that podcast, I was like, wow, I almost took that for granted that I like have that luxury of time now. And like, what else is more important than like the people that we care about and loved ones? And like, I don't know, I've had experiences and heard stories of people like not getting time off for funerals and like just crazy stuff like that, and not getting time off because you know, I don't know. There's just nothing more important than people and the people that we love. So like, I don't know, for it felt like my corporate job was always more important. Like I always had to be there regardless. And I don't have that anymore. I have so much more flexibility to go and do the things that I find important. And if I need to not work one day, I can do that. And, you know, it's not a perfect world. And like, sure, sometimes you have, you know, part-time jobs that get in the way, but that's the thing. Like, I think with my part-time jobs, I don't value them as high as I used to value a corporate job. It's not my life. It's like a way to accrue money, but if I get fired tomorrow, that's fine. I'll go find another one. And I don't have this, there isn't this power over me like there was with a corporate job. With the corporate job, it's your only income. It's your everything. And to not be like chained by that anymore is such a feeling of freedom, I think, for me. And yeah, I'm just forever grateful of that. And having your time is really important. And I guess I'll leave that at that. So those are the four things that I, you know, this is my rant of an episode of why I think corporate jobs are bad. Corporate life is detrimental to us. But again, this is my opinion. This is my experiences. You know, I don't think anybody that doesn't agree with me is a bad person or anything like that. So, but in conclusion, I guess just to run over the four reasons that your job is holding you back, your corporate job is holding you back. The first one being it's hiding your authentic self. You don't feel free to have your authenticity. Second is you're living in a constant state of fear. At least I was. Third is stealing your creativity. And fourth is taking all of your time. And in conclusion, I think I want to make a couple more points that I have on my notes here. Yes. So I think the last thing I want to say is like, if I'm trying to speak to somebody who's like in that environment and wanting to leave, I think the biggest thing I can say 5 years later is that the hardest thing by far was just making the decision and leaving. And it didn't feel like that when I was in it. It felt like the hardest thing was like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to have a business or support myself? But really just making the actual change was the hardest thing. And sure, I've had like lots of ups and downs, and they were all learning lessons. Like they weren't a negative thing. Like it helped me learn more of what I want to do with my life, what I want to do with my time, how I value my life, you know, finding out what my voice is. So it hasn't been negative. So the hardest thing was actually just making the decision to leave and doing it. So, you know, I wouldn't suggest making rash decisions, but sometimes it's like, if you can just get yourself to do the thing, then everything else kind of becomes a little bit easier. So like once I got myself to just leave the environment, like everything changed. My perspectives on things changed. Like nothing was the same again. So the brain that I was using when I was in corporate, it was like all those thoughts were not even valid because I didn't know what it was like to leave yet. And by leaving, and not being in that environment, it opened a lot more possibilities up. So I think that it seems overwhelming, it feels overwhelming, but focusing in on like just what can I do to actually make that change, I think is the most important part. And then kind of facing the rest of it when you're there. And but yeah, that's my opinion. And I think that's what I would tell my old self. That's what I would tell my like petrified version of me, like quitting my corporate job over the phone during COVID. I would say like, this is the hardest part right now. This is why it feels so scary, is because this is the hardest part. And then once you make this decision to pivot your life down a different path, it becomes more joyful. And not to say that there's not going to be hard times, there will be, but you're doing it for a reason now. Whereas like when you're in a job working for somebody else and you don't understand the reason why you're doing something, like that's just the biggest sense of detachment from yourself. And yeah, I do believe that. And I had one other note here, but I don't want to get to it. So I think I'll end it there. And hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it wasn't too preachy or ranty. I tried to not look at it as like a complaining thing, but more of like, how are these things that are making me want to complain? Like, what's the actual reason as to why I think it's bad? So hopefully I was able to articulate that well, and hopefully it was helpful. Last thing I'll say, I forgot to mention in the last episode, I have a free guide that you can download with the link in the show notes to help you soften your inner critic, because I feel like that's been another big lesson that I've learned, is like how hard I am on myself. Since leaving that corporate job, I've realized how hard I am on myself and how that holds me back. So if you're struggling with that, hopefully this guide can help you. But I'll leave it at that. I will see you next week. And yeah, I think this episode went kind of long. I have no idea what time I'm at here, but thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with it. And I will see you on another episode real soon. Take care.